Steve Harrington is the quintessential handsome 1980s heartthrob, the Stranger Things character who, according to the creators, was originally meant to disappear at the end of the first season. But he's much more than that. He's the guy everyone wishes they could be friends with, the older brother everyone dreams of having, the boyfriend every girl would have wanted, and the kind of guy every mother would want for her daughter. In short, Steve is the most beloved character in the entire series. But have you ever wondered why? Steve Harrington's transformation from a shallow high school stereotype into a genuine, selfless hero is one of the most well-crafted redemption arcs in modern television. In the first season of Stranger Things, Steve begins as the archetypal 1980s popular jock, handsome, privileged, and seemingly uninterested in anyone outside his social circle. The audience is meant to dislike him. He appears to be an obstacle between Nancy Wheeler and Jonathan Byers, the characters framed as the show's sympathetic underdogs. This framing primes viewers to associate Steve with arrogance and moral shallowness. However, when examining his actual behavior in Season 1, his actions reveal more complexity than his reputation suggests. Unlike his friends, who are openly cruel and condescending, Steve repeatedly rebukes them for their comments. His main flaw is complacency, remaining in the company of toxic people rather than standing against them. This makes him appear complicit in bullying, even when his instincts are not malicious. The show later dismantles this illusion by forcing Steve to recognize their toxicity and break ties, an early sign of moral growth. His conflict with Jonathan over the camera incident demonstrates how Stranger Things rewrites the bully versus loner trope. On the surface, Steve seems to fit the cliché of the popular kid destroying the outsider's property. Yet context alters the interpretation. Jonathan had secretly photographed Nancy while she was undressing. Steve's anger, while immaturely expressed, stems from genuine concern for her privacy and dignity. The confrontation exposes his emotional volatility rather than inherent cruelty. The turning point comes when, at the end of the season, Steve decides to return and help Nancy and Jonathan after initially fleeing in fear. Confronted with a real monster, the Demogorgon, he overcomes his instinct for self-preservation and acts out of loyalty and courage. That single gesture, turning back and picking up the baseball bat instead of running away, marks the completion of his moral awakening. He transforms from a self-centered teenager into someone willing to risk his life for others, and by replacing Jonathan's broken camera, he shows genuine accountability. By the end of the first season, Steve has earned the audience's respect, not by being the designated handsome lead, but by learning from his mistakes. His redemption feels authentic because it unfolds gradually, built on reflection and consequence, rather than on an abrupt, unearned change. Steve Harrington's relationships are the backbone of his character development, illustrating how connection reshapes his priorities in self-image. His first major relationship, with Nancy Wheeler, acts as both catalyst and mirror for his early transformation. Initially, Steve views Nancy through the lens of high school status, seeing her as a way to confirm his own popularity. But as their relationship deepens, it exposes his emotional immaturity and forces him to confront the gap between superficial affection and genuine love. When Nancy distances herself after Barb's disappearance, Steve's instinct is to protect his reputation rather than her well-being, an error that defines his Season 1 arc. By apologizing and trying to make amends, he begins learning accountability, a skill that becomes central to his later identity. By Season 2, Nancy has moved on emotionally, but Steve's response is radically different from his past behavior. Instead of anger or jealousy, he accepts the end of their relationship with emotional restraint and grace. His heartbreak clears space for a new, unexpected dynamic, his bond with Dustin Henderson. What begins as a comic pairing, an aimless graduate and a curious kid, becomes one of the show's most emotionally resonant relationships. Steve steps into a surrogate older brother role, offering advice, encouragement, and protection. In return, Dustin gives him purpose. The babysitter role that defines Steve's arc emerges directly from this friendship, showing that his empathy no longer depends on romance or status. Steve's friendship with Robin Buckley in Season 3 completes his evolution from egocentric teen to emotionally intelligent adult. Working together at Scoops Ahoy, Steve learns to see people as equals, not through the filters of popularity or attraction. His attempt to confess romantic feelings to Robin leads to her revelation that she is gay, a moment that could easily have fractured their bond. Instead, Steve's reaction is one of immediate acceptance and support. This interaction not only breaks from the homophobic norms of the 1980s setting, but also redefines what intimacy can mean. It proves that Steve's empathy has matured into unconditional friendship, no longer tied to personal gains. Across all these connections, romantic, platonic, and familial, Steve demonstrates emotional adaptability. He loses the illusion of being king of Hawkins High, but gains a new identity as protector, confidant, and friend. His value becomes defined not by who admires him, but by how he treats those around him. Steve Harrington's transformation into a genuine hero is defined not by supernatural powers or strategic genius, but by selflessness and courage under pressure. From Season 2 onward, Steve repeatedly risks his life for others, often in circumstances where he has nothing to gain. This consistent willingness to protect people weaker or younger than himself becomes the moral core of his character. His bravery is instinctive rather than calculated. He acts first, questions later, and the danger he faces only reinforces his loyalty to the group. The junkyard scene in Season 2 exemplifies this shift. When the Demodogs attack, Steve puts himself directly between the monsters and the kids, swinging his bat to draw their attention away. He's unarmed, terrified, and fully aware that he's outmatched, yet he chooses to stand his ground. This act is not about proving strength. It's about shielding those who depend on him. Later, when the group decides to enter the tunnels beneath Hawkins, Steve refuses to let the kids go alone, taking charge and ensuring their safety. What distinguishes his courage from recklessness is intent. He never seeks glory or validation, only the safety of others. By Season 3, Steve's heroism evolves into leadership. Within the Scoop Troop, Robin, Dustin, and Erica, he naturally assumes the role of protector. He may not solve the scientific or supernatural puzzles, but he handles every physical confrontation and absorbs most of the danger. His endurance through repeated beatings, interrogations, and near-death situations reveals a pattern. Steve becomes the group's human shield. When captured by Russian agents, he refuses to betray his friends despite torture, a subtle but crucial testament to his moral resilience. Season 4 continues this trajectory, showing that Steve's selflessness is no longer situational, it's instinctive. When the group investigates the Upside Down, Steve volunteers to dive into the lake first, knowing the risk. Later, when the Demobats attack, he fights them off alone to buy time for his friends to escape. Every season positions Steve as the first to step into danger and the last to retreat. Even his small gestures, checking on Max at the cemetery, refusing to leave anyone behind, reflect a protector's mindset. Steve's heroism is not superhuman. It's grounded in empathy, physical courage, and emotional steadiness under pressure. In a story filled with extraordinary powers, his bravery is the most human, and therefore the most relatable. Beyond his bravery, Steve Harrington's enduring appeal also stems from how Stranger Things balances his heroism with humor and emotional vulnerability. His charm lies not in being flawless, but in being authentically human, awkward, self-deprecating, and unexpectedly funny. After his serious arc in Season 2, Season 3 reintroduces Steve as a source of levity without undermining his depth. Working at Scoops Ahoy, he becomes a subtle embodiment of post-high school aimlessness, a once popular kid struggling to redefine himself in adulthood. His uniform, complete with sailor hat and name tag, visually reduces the former King of Hawkins High to an ordinary worker, grounding his character in realism. Steve's comedic appeal arises from contrast. He is brave in crisis, yet hilariously incompetent in normal life. His failed attempts to flirt, his exaggerated reactions to danger, and his resigned attitude toward constant beatings create an archetype of reluctant heroism. Humor becomes his coping mechanism, a natural response to fear and failure. It also enhances audience empathy. Viewers laugh not at him, but with him, recognizing that humor is how he processes chaos and uncertainty. His dynamic with Dustin amplifies this. The dad jokes and sarcastic exchanges between them highlight Steve's awkward transition into adulthood. He doesn't consciously try to be funny. His humor flows from frustration and sincerity. This makes his comedic presence organic rather than forced. Similarly, his banter with Robin in Season 3 and 4 shows a mature, witty rapport. Their exchanges, rapid, teasing, and grounded in mutual respect, demonstrate that comedy can coexist with emotional depth. What truly humanizes Steve, however, is the way the series allows humor to coexist with pain. His insecurities about the future and his uncertainty about love emerge in brief but revealing moments. The audience understands that his self-deprecating jokes often conceal deeper feelings of inadequacy. When he says he has no future, the line is played for comedy, but it actually reveals a young man stripped of his adolescent identity, struggling to rebuild it through kindness and courage. Steve is not a caricature of a redeemed jock, but a fully realized person who faces life's fear and disappointment with humor, loyalty, and perseverance. His humanity, made up in equal parts of courage and clumsiness, is what keeps his character emotionally authentic, even amid the supernatural extremes of the series. Steve Harrington's widespread popularity is not a product of his screen time or his looks, but of how Stranger Things constructs him as the emotional anchor for the audience. He embodies a kind of growth that feels achievable. Change born not of destiny or power, but of self-awareness and choice. Viewers witness his evolution from arrogance to humility, from self-interest to compassion, and from insecurity to quiet confidence. Each step of this journey mirrors the process of personal maturation that many people experience, especially in early adulthood. Unlike the show's supernatural heroes, Steve's strength is moral rather than mystical. He is a character who earns his goodness through trial and reflection. His heroism is voluntary. No one orders him to fight, protect, or lead. He chooses to, even when no one notices. This agency makes him relatable. He represents the idea that redemption is not given, but practiced, one small act at a time. Another reason for his enduring resonance lies in his emotional accessibility. Steve is one of the few characters whose growth occurs entirely in plain sight. The audience observes his mistakes, regrets, apologies, and perseverance. This transparency builds trust. Viewers feel as though they know him personally. When he comforts Dustin, supports Robin, or risks his life for Max, these actions reaffirm what people most want to believe about humanity, that people can change and that decency can be learned. There is also a meta dimension to his popularity. The Duffer Brothers originally planned to kill Steve at the end of Season 1, but Joe Keery's performance redefined the character's trajectory. This behind-the-scenes shift mirrors the in-universe redemption. Steve survived because both the creators and the audience saw potential in him. That parallel deepens the viewer's emotional investment. Steve's continued existence feels like a collective act of faith rewarded. Ultimately, Steve resonates because he represents growth without cynicism. He is proof that flawed people can become better without losing their humanity. In a series defined by extraordinary events, he remains the most ordinary person, and, paradoxically, the most beloved. His courage is accessible, his kindness imperfect, his humor real. Steve Harrington stands as the show's moral heartbeat, not because he was meant to be a hero, but because he chose to become one. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please like it and subscribe to the channel to show your support. And if you'd like to keep going, here's another video from our channel that you might enjoy.